Greetings everyone and welcome back to 365 Days of Prog. Today we're gonna be reviewing Octavarium by Dream Theater.
Hi, my name's Naomi. I'm an avid progressive rock fan, but I'm a long ways from knowing all the prog albums out there. But this year, I'm gonna give it a try. This is 365 Days of Prog.
So you might notice that everything looks kind of different in some way in the background and in everything, and that's because I'm recording this on a new webcam, and hopefully the quality is good enough so you'll enjoy my videos and not unsubscribe after this. But I will inform you that something kind of odd is going to happen, so this video is using the webcam. The next video of tomorrow is gonna not have it, it's gonna use my phone, and then from now on we're gonna start using the webcam full time. Another thing is a bit of context about today's video. This was actually made during a live stream like this script, and we listened to this album on a live stream. So it was really fun. I usually do these live streams on Sundays at, I believe, 11 AM EST. Don't take me for that. It's pretty nice, and if you're willing, you can join these streams. They're really fun and you can say a lot of things and I interact with you guys. So anyway, we listened to this album on stream, and I also wrote this script whilst doing the stream itself. But anyway, here's some of my favorite bits from this album. So last time that we looked at Dream Theater, we of course took a look at the very well known Metropolis Part 2 Scenes from a Memory, which is probably their most successful album as of now. And today we're looking at an album called Octavarium, which may be not as regarded highly as Metropolis Part 2, but as all Dream Theater albums are, it's pretty much a staple of progressive metal in the modern era. Now I think the main thing that I really noticed when listening to this one is just how much more contemporary it is. It felt like it was made in the thought of creating more radio friendly tracks on here, and despite still remaining somewhat progressive, I do feel like most of the songs on here do try and cater themselves towards a broader audience, and that makes the overall album less good for those of you who are looking for more progressive songs. Now this album, although feeling like a concept album, I can't really tell you why, but it feels like a concept album, is more of an idealistic album. It has one idea that really revolves this album around. The idea actually hinders back to the name Octavarium, which I was informed by my lovely chat over on the stream, basically means a set of 8 keys. Of course, speaking in musical terms, keys being A, B, and so on and so forth. And much like how Gentle Giant used 8 tracks to create their magnum opus called Octopus, because you know it's 8 opuses, I think that's kind of cool, so does Dream Theater take inspiration from that idea and actually made the 8 tracks unique to each and every one, in which each track on here has a different key. And if you know your music theory quite well, you know that the first track and the last track are on the same key but with a gap of a full octave. And knowing this entire thing, we have to ask the question of how good this album actually is. Well, I noted that this was much more catering towards a broader audience, and you can definitely feel that, and despite not knowing a lot of Dream Theater's discography myself, from everything that I've read and listened, I understand that this album is definitely a change of pace from all the ones that came before it. And I definitely felt that step towards accessibility. I was expecting, you know, chaotic music, something which is very story driven, there's a lot of narrative into it, but I was greeted with something completely different, which was honestly kinda underwhelming comparing it to, of course, their magnum opus. And while I kinda enjoyed each track for its own, I feel that within each track within itself, it didn't really go anywhere, it didn't veer into new directions, it kinda relied on repetitiveness all the time, and I don't really like that. And all in all, the shortness of the tracks really felt to me like it was confining them to not explore new grounds. But if there's actually one thing that I really liked about this album from the start all the way to the end, was the contributions made by Mark Portnoy. Now, he did two things. Of course, he is the drummer for them, so he of course played the drums and he played them masterfully, always doing something which is a bit different from what you'd expect from him to play, and I think that's really cool. His innovative way really dealt a lot of good to this album. But another thing is, most of this album is actually his own personal creation, and you can definitely see it with the last track of Octavarium, which is a track written by Mark Portnoy, which basically goes to express a lot of his creative inspiration in creating music and as a whole people and subjects and albums and songs that really inspired him. I will have to admit that I was kinda underwhelmed by John Petrucci's guitar playing on here, and I never thought I would say that, like it feels, you know, wrong saying that, but I don't know, there was nothing really stand outish about how he played on this album. I would actually have to give this holy grail to Jordan Rudess on the keyboards and the piano in particular, because I think he did a fantastic job on a lot of sections over here. I can't really recall right now, but there's one song on here where he plays the piano in the background and it's so subtle, but it adds all the right texture to that song, and I really love that. And yeah, this album kind of dragged on, but knowing the future as I always do, I knew that this one was going to end with a huge 24-minute long epic. And you know, this Octavarium epic was basically the redeeming feature of this entire album. If it seemed for any moment like the band was going in a direction and they weren't coming back, then you'd be wrong, because this last track on here is really where they came back to their roots and created fantastic music, never seeming to repeat anything, never going into this loop of constant same creation, and honestly it was really fun to listen to this one giant epic. And this track in particular is the one that consists of most of the references and Easter eggs that John Petrucci has put into this album. So you've got a lot of references, really direct references to Pink Floyd with Careful With That Axe Eugene or Shine On You Crazy Diamond, and you also have the Beatles and you have like Genesis, and honestly it's pretty freaking cool. And I've researched and I've seen that Mark Portnoy actually also referenced Rush as being an influence of him, and honestly if I had to compare this album to any other band, I would say that it really sounds a lot like what Rush did. Of course not being as good, but still it has that distinct unique sound with all the composition and the vocals that I actually kind of liked. And you know, that's one thing that I really like about Dream Theater, just them being very open with who inspired them, who influenced them to create what they create. It really reminds you that they're actual people and not just gods of music, and that's really cool. You know, back when I did the video for Metropolis Part 2, I actually did some research and I discovered that the band did some sort of vlog of them creating the album back in the day, and you can definitely see them talking about their own influences, from The Wall by Pink Floyd to Sgt. Pepper by the Beatles, and I really enjoyed that, and I really enjoy that now because you can actually see that those guys, you know, they're just regular people creating great music. So yeah, I wasn't blown away by this album. It didn't really change my perception of the world, and definitely not Dream Theater as a whole, but I will have to say that one thing that I do take from this album is the amazing Octavarium epic at the end. I have my own playlist of long prog epics, and that one's definitely getting into that playlist. So I'm glad that I got to know this album mainly for that, but honestly all else will be kind of forgotten. So this cover definitely makes you think. I don't really know about what, but it is thought-provoking in many different ways. Now, I was completely sure that this was made by Hypnosis, but apparently it wasn't. It was actually made by a person called Hugh Syme. And this cover, despite being, you know, a cover, basically being a frame in time, has actually quite a lot of liveliness to it. There is anticipation because you know what's gonna happen. It's a Newton's cradle, you know that the ball is gonna come back and then transfer energy, and you know, this one makes it a whole lot livelier. And if I try and find some connection between the music and the idea to this cover, I would have to say that it goes in some sort of a cycle, much like the way that the keys in an Octavarium go. So I would have to say that this Newton's cradle basically goes in a never-ending cycle of transferring energy, which is kind of like what this album does, but I think I'm kind of stretching things out more than I should. One thing I really dislike is the black bar at the bottom. I really don't like it, and from a graphic designer point of view, I would have to argue that there was probably something they didn't want you to see, or that didn't really come out nice in the photo shoot, so they wanted to black it out with this bar and then they put the band logo on it. Honestly, I don't like it at all, and another thing that I don't really like is the text at all. I think this cover would have been much better if they just kept it plain and simple with the picture and the balls and nothing else beside it. And if they wanted to go the other way, I think they should have put more emphasis on the text. But as it stands right now, I feel that both things are kind of taking attention from this cover and not really finding any harmony within it. So yeah, when it comes to the rating of this album, this one gets a pretty nice 7 out of 10. Of course, it doesn't impress me like Metropolis Part 2, but I really doubt that anything by Dream Theater is gonna top that one, so you know, that's what it is. But that's about it, guys. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and stay tuned for tomorrow because we're gonna be listening to Rock Bottom by Robert Wyatt. I of course want to thank my lovely supporter over on Patreon, so thank you so much to Clay Walnum, you are the best. And I also want to thank to my lovely donators on the stream. You guys have made this purchase of this webcam possible, and I'm so grateful for it, so thank you so much. But that's about it, guys. Have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Bye, guys.